Hello, I'm Zoe Cunningham and I'm here with Rousso, who is a poker professional, a poker journalist and a poker ambassador for Unibet.
That's right.
So Al, can you tell me a bit about the kind of stuff you do? For example, I don't really know what a poker ambassador is.
Right, I think the term actually started when people were not necessarily poker pros, i.e. they were paid by they were sponsored by sites to play poker in one way or another, but they couldn't necessarily claim to be poker professionals, i.e. those who made their money from poker. So that would be stars, you know, Boris Becker, for example, is the famous one from Poker Stars. You know, it's a tennis player, not a poker player, but and I'm a journalist by trade, I guess, but I do also make money from poker. So I'm an ambassador according to Unibet, but I am also a poker professional. Okay,
great. So what did you do before poker and how did you get into it?
Well, I was a businessman. Before that, I was an academic. I did a PhD. After the PhD, I took over the family business, and that was importing kosher pickles, which is why I became the Pickleman, which is my online moniker.
Okay, so you're also known as the Pickleman, as well as just plain old Al Rousso.
Yeah, I'm the Pickleman in my column, which is in Bluff Europe. So it's the Pickleman poker, basically.
What kind of things do you write about in your column?
Well, I guess because I came from a research-based background, I try and research into poker. I think there's not enough academic-y stuff in poker, and so I tried to redress that by researching some stats. I was one of the first people to actually put some stats in a magazine of how people ran. I wrote an article called "I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good," which was showing how basically if you were a poker player and you were entering the main event every year for the whole of your life, you'd rather be Jamie Gold than Alan Cunningham, who famously were in the same main event, the biggest main event of all. Jamie Gold won 12 million. Alan Cunningham, I think, came third or maybe fourth in that event for 4 million. Alan Cunningham is most definitely the better player and has the better history, but the aim of that article was to show that the long run isn't long enough that you would reach it in your lifetime. Your lifetime isn't long enough to reach the long run regards to main event. You could only do maybe 40 main events in your life, but you'd probably need to about 500 of them before the variance evened out.
Wow, so that's got really interesting implications for all these top poker players who see around, the big winners. Who do you think are the best players? Maybe not the luckiest, but the best players?
Well, I was asked that question a couple of years ago, and I said either Dan Negreanu or Phil Ivey, and now they're the top two on the all-time money list, so kind of been vindicated. But of course, a lot of people thought that Phil Ivey was the best even 2 or 3 years ago. They are basically the two pin-up boys for the two big sites, you know, Poker Stars and Full Tilt. Yeah. I think these days the audience is sophisticated enough to discern between really good online players, really good online, so online cash, online tournament, live tournament, and to a lesser extent live cash, but you do have things like high stakes poker where, you know, online live cash is tackled. Certainly best all-rounders, Negreanu and Ivey, but you have to sort of mention and Antonius and people like that who have played both online and live and played in the biggest games in the world.
What are the key skills that make these the top players?
Well, relentless dedication, I think, is a big one. I mean, these are people that do it all day, every day. The latest advert claims that Ivey plays 90 hours a week for, you know, 4,680 hours a year or something. It's not possible. But you can also imagine that Ivey lives and breathes poker in the same way that Negreanu does, in the same way that Dwan does. I guess they all do. In fact, I wrote another article about that. It was called The Difference Between Me and Neil Channing, where I sort of lamented the fact that I wasn't dedicated enough to actually playing poker to be one of the best, because I think it's in the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, where he claims that it's not natural talent that makes a virtuoso, it's putting in 10,000 hours of hard graft in a certain discipline. And Neil Channing, who the article was about, has easily done that in his lifetime. In the last 5 years, he's probably done that. And I said, well, maybe I can do that for journalism or research, so maybe that's my area of expertise. But going back to what you said, the other things apart from relentless application and discipline, all the big stars seem to be fairly even-keeled emotionally. I mean, Ivy is known as this sort of Iceman, and also Dwan, I think, as well. Negreanu gives a bit of table talk, but I think he's pretty even-keeled as well. And they're all very, very good at maths. They're all very, very good at reading their opponents. And I guess certainly in terms of Dwan and Ivy, relentlessly aggressive as well, which is something that you need.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say there about them needing to have an even keel. Mm-hmm. Do you think kind of bad temper is a sign of a bad poker player?
Well, some poker players have got away with it, famously Phil Hellmuth. It is part of an act for him, but I do also think that he is genuinely bad-tempered, or at least he certainly has been in the past. For the average players in the casinos, yeah, it equates to tilt, and tilt is bad. I mean, tilt is basically where you're not focusing on your A game and you've allowed your emotions to get the better of you. Ivy doesn't look like he tilts. If he does, it's all going on behind this stony exterior.
Super cool.
Yeah, he is super cool. And I mean, the most famous thing about Ivy, I guess, the most celebrated, let's say, is that he just doesn't care about the money. And he will, there are all sorts of anecdotes attached to him, presumably most apocryphal, but if you asked him to flip for $1 million, he would not have a problem with doing it. And I think that's part of it as well. Most of us, even if it was £100, would have a bit of a twinge if we lost. And I guess these people are made of different stuff. They can not allow the emotions to get to them.
Wow. So what's your best personal poker story? Maybe your best win, or the best moment, the best turnaround?
I don't really remember. I mean, I don't store away the big bluffs and sort of say, yeah, boo. I mean, I lost a big pot in France the other day. It's a shame I did, because that would have been the biggest pot I'd won. I mean, I guess the first time I had a really big win online, I mean, that was a long time ago. It was really good. It was like in the Ladbrokes, it's called Who's the Daddy? It was a $300 buy-in, which, even now online, that would be reasonable. It would be the higher end of an online buy-in for me. Not necessarily live, but 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was a big buy-in for me, and I satellited my way in, $32 satellite. And I came 6th, I believe, for $3,000, which probably, doubled my bankroll or added more than 50% to my bankroll at the time. So, I'd have to win a lot these days to do that. So, yeah, I rested on my laurels for a couple of days after that one.
Okay, so this is a bit of an unusual question. Mm-hmm. I think opinions quite split on this particular subject.
Right.
But where's the most glamorous place that you've played poker? Is poker in fact a glamorous game?
Sometimes poker flatters to deceive that it's glamorous. It is an everyman sport at the same, or game, I think. And nowhere is that more apparent than Vegas, where you go to these incredibly, sproncy places, the Wynn, the Venetian, they're incredible setups. If you think about, mocking up Venice in the middle of the desert, there's no expense spared, and the poker room is really very good. But who you sit down with, these are the Homer Simpsons of the world. They're just average guys on holiday in Vegas, with their beer and their, fried chicken and whatever. And that's who make up poker. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some there are some glamorous places. I've been to Les Ambassadeurs Club in Mayfair, which is an exclusive club, and I mean, I had to kind of get in as a media. I wouldn't be getting in there as a poker player. You know, this is where some really quite big names play. Also, I recently went to the EPT in Deauville in northern France, and Deauville's a very kind of chic place, and the casino reflects that. It is a nice, you know, it's got like 20-foot high windows with like curtains and everything. And you do feel in some of these places like you're playing somewhere special. I haven't actually played in Monaco, but apparently during the EPT there, which it won't be there this year, but the curtains kind of pull back and you've got a view of Monaco, Monte Carlo Bay, or the marina, I should say. So yes, I think there are some glamorous places out there, but poker's definitely an everyman kind of pastime, and as they say, you know, the king can be cheek by jowl with the peasant at the table, and you know, it's a great leveler. So,
and maybe even the peasant will win.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's the idea, you know, that it's table stakes, so even if the king sits next to the peasant, you know, if the peasant's got the same amount of money in front of them, that's all they can bet. So yeah.
So just to finish, what are your personal poker goals?
Well, everyone says winning a bracelet, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to win a bracelet, but I think that that's maybe too ambitious a goal, given that I probably only play 4 or 5 bracelet events a year maximum. I guess to keep on winning, I guess to post winning results online, live, whatever I do, to enjoy the game. I think that's a goal. I mean, thus far I've enjoyed it, but the more enjoyment I get out of it, because, you know, when poker becomes a job, it's just like any other job. You want to get as much fulfillment out of it as you possibly can. So I don't think I have any concrete goals in the sense of, you know, things I must attain in order to say, oh, I've landed, I am a poker player now. Because if you look at anyone's Hendon mob, it can always be improved upon. And, you know, even Negrano and Ivy, we mentioned earlier, you know, both over 13 million now in tournament earnings. It doesn't end, it never ends. So, and, you know, Phil Hellmuth with 11 bracelets, obviously looking over his shoulder and every summer thinking, I've got to get another bracelet, someone will catch me one day. So I think, in a very kind of boring answer to your question, it has to be a kind of Zen-like goal of achieving some kind of enlightenment within poker and playing money-making poker and enjoying it while you're there.
Well,
but a bracelet would be nice.
We can't fault poker enlightenment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what it's all about.
All right, great. Thanks very much, Al.
Thank you.